Just we're talking some DC politics, but we're getting a lot more local here right now. I've got attorney Tom Dickinson. Thank you for coming in today.
Good afternoon, Kate.
Appreciate it because you're back in the courts again this
That's
week
right.
with more than 70 retirees that you're representing.
That's right.
Again, stemming from the 2011 pension reform, they are still fighting for their COLAs.
That's right. That's right. What happened, as you know, was that the COLAs were taken away in 2011, and then and there was a lawsuit filed, and then in 2015 there was a settlement of that lawsuit. I represent clients who were not satisfied with the results of that settlement, who refused to go along with it, but they were drawn into a class action suit against their desires, and were forced into the settlement, and were told by the Superior Court that they're stuck with it. And of course, they're not happy about that, and that's why we took an appeal to the Supreme Court.
So you've got the appeal right now, and talk with us, put with the legal hat on. Is there precedent with folks who are involved with the class action that's saying, I really didn't want to be part of this class action?
Yes, there is, and frankly, it's an uphill battle because you have to show that the settlement was not fair, that you weren't adequately represented in the settlement, that there are reasons why it was inappropriate for the court to approve the settlement. And that's where we are. Those are the arguments we're making. What we're saying essentially is that when the General Assembly took away their cost of living adjustments, they basically took away something that had been granted to them as a contract. And under our state constitution and the United States Constitution, you can't do that. Also, we're arguing that it was their property, and like when you take someone's home for a bridge or a tunnel, you have to compensate them for taking their property, and we're arguing that they have to be appropriately compensated, which they haven't been.
Do you expect a good majority of them to turn out? Is it Thursday you'll be in court?
It's Thursday morning. There are 70 in my group. There's another attorney who has about 70 in his group as well. We do expect that a good number of them are going to be there. I don't think they'll all be there, but I wouldn't be surprised to see more than 50 from each group there. And you know, they're very excited to have the case heard and to see what the court's reaction is.
So you talk about the contract angle, you talk about the property angle. Does the hardship angle play a role?
Well, it does play to some extent in the question of whether or not it's fair. You know, many of these folks retired with an expectation, a promise that they were going to get this cost of living adjustment. Some people retired early, knowing that by the time they reached their normal retirement age, with the cost of living adjustment, it kind of would have caught up to what they would have expected to have as a full pension. And now they're left in a position where, you know, they can't go back to work, they can't get their jobs back and build their salaries back up. So they've really been deprived of something that they expected. And they've had to make decisions and make choices that they didn't think they were going to have to make at this point in their lives because of it.
Let's talk about that 80% solvency number that was decided upon back when this was decided. Was that ever a realistic number?
I can't see how it could have been. I mean, you know, they were in the 50s, and there was a suggestion early on that the state would promise to devote all of its any surplus to building up the funding of the retirement fund. Now, that was never done. They didn't formally agree to do that. In fact, there was some language in a bill that was taken out that would have done that.
And what year would this have been around?
This was around 2015.
Okay.
2015, when the settlement happened. So
they said, oh, don't worry, if we've got extra money, we'll help you out. But the language is taken out.
The language was taken out.
So not in good faith.
Well, that's my argument is, you know, anytime you enter into a contract, and the settlement was a contract, again, a contract, you know, there's a representation that you're going to, in good faith, try to do what you've promised to do or what you've said you're going to do. Has the state, in good faith, tried to meet that 80%? I don't think there's a very good argument that they have, especially when they have other spending priorities, you know, a baseball stadium.
That was my very next question.
A baseball stadium, free tuition, all of which, you know, may be very good public policy goals, but if you have a promise that you've made, you kind of have to fulfill that promise before you go on to other things, and that's where the unfairness is.
So did I essentially just hear basically your opening remarks that are going to take place? Did I take the wind out of the sails?
Well, let's say it's a dress rehearsal.
Anything else that you're going to present on Thursday that folks might not have seen or read or heard about till now?
Well, I think there will be some arguments about the class action and how a class action is supposed to play out, and how my group, in any event, the Clifford group, which is who I represent, didn't have an opportunity to vote, or certainly didn't vote in favor of this settlement, and feel that they were kind of, you know, drawn into it and railroaded through it. So I think you'll hear some of that. And I'm sure you'll hear from the state's attorneys what their position is, which is that, you know, the state was in a dire financial situation and had to do this. I think there are good arguments against that, but we'll hear those in Thursday.
Okay. Anything else folks should know while we have you here in studio? Because again, dating back from 2011 and, putting again that legal cap on, which you never take off, was there this expectation or thoughts that this could be so protracted that it was still going to be being fought in 2018?
Well, things always take longer than we hope they will. And I think, part of that is because the lawyers need to take time to, flesh out the arguments, and we have to get transcripts and things of that nature. So I'm sure that, that everyone wishes this could have been resolved sooner, but, we're here now, and I think the court is prepared to listen to the arguments and decide the case. And the court generally works fairly quickly, so I would expect that we would have a decision from the court, within a couple of months after the argument.
Okay, so not too far. And again, talk with us a little bit about the cohort of who you're representing. What's the age ranges that we're talking about here?
Well, they're all folks who had retired prior to the settlement. The average age of state retirees, at least at the time of the trial, was just under 73 years.
Okay.
So my folks, some a little bit younger, some a little bit older than that, but they're generally folks in that range.
Okay. And did I see, was one of the clients you're representing, did someone pass away?
Yes, one of my group did pass away during the time the case was pending. That's right.
Interesting. Well, again, the latest in such a major issue here in the state, stemming back from both 11 and then the class action in 15. And again, as you mentioned when I asked you earlier, looking at potential other, again, instances where people involved in class action said, I didn't want to be involved in this class action.
Right. It does happen, and in some situations they have an absolute right to opt out. In this situation, it was up to the judge to decide whether or not they could, and our position is that the judge should have let them out, and that's one of the arguments.
Okay, well, we're going to keep an eye on what happens this Thursday morning in court. Tom Dickinson, I appreciate your taking the time to come in and give us a little bit of the perspective of who you're representing, again, as they're looking at these COLAs that were taken away in 11. Here we are in 18. We're going to see what happens moving forward. Tom Dickinson, thanks so much.
Thanks. Good to see you.
I'll let you around the corner, and don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.